Welcome to There's Sometimes a Buggy, Irresponsible Opinions about Classic Film. I'm Elise.
I'm Dave. This week, it's the Hollywood Studios Year by Year, MGM 1933. We've got a John Gilbert double feature for you. In his last year at the studio, Fast Workers and Queen Christina. After that, stay tuned for Fear and Moviegoing in Toronto. We went to the Paradise Cinema last night and we saw Hard Eight by Paul Thomas Anderson. Let's dive right into our Hollywood Studios material, beginning as always with Joel W. Findler and his pink and gray chart from the Hollywood Story. He gives us a graphic presentation of, in his mind, the most important people under contract to each studio during a given year, and he gives them 1, 2, or 3 star ratings. This is based on his impression of their value to that studio during the length of that contract. MGM, as always, has quite a multitude of stars, so let's hear them all. Wallace Beery, 2 stars. Clark Gable, 3 stars. Robert Young, 2 stars. Johnny Weissmuller, 1 star. Jean Harlow, 3 stars. Myrna Loy, 2 stars. Ramon Novarro, 2 stars. Marion Davies, 1 star. This always agitates us. John Gilbert, 2 stars. Norma Shearer, 3 stars. Joan Crawford, 3 stars. Greta Garbo, highly relevant to this week's episode, 3 stars. Marie Dressler, 2 stars. And Robert Montgomery, 2 stars. Over to John Springer's Forgotten Films to Remember. Mr. Springer's book, he divides up the year into movies that everyone remembers, as far as he's concerned, in 1980 at the time of the writing of the book, and then films that he wishes people would make an effort to see and remember. On his list of films that everyone remembers, from MGM, Jean Harlow's Bombshell, Joan Crawford's Dancing Lady, George Cukor's Dinner at 8 with a Screen Full of Stars, The Great Garbo in Queen Christina, Tarzan and His Mate with 1 star Johnny Weissmuller, Marie Dressler as Tugboat Annie, and that's all we've got for MGM movies remembered from 1933. We've got a whole cavalcade of films that he wants people to re-encounter.
Is Fast Workers among them?
No. Rose Franken's play, Another Language, about the clash of a young wife with her husband's horrendous family, transferred well to the screen, especially in the subplot about the infatuation with the wife, Helen Hayes, of her husband's rebellious young nephew, John Beale, who had sensitivity in that role.
I don't think Drunken White would have approved of that sentence.
No, me neither. Louise Closser Hale as the stifling matriarch and Margaret Hamilton as the humorous sister-in-law. Edward H. Griffith directed, we like him, screenplay by Herman J. Mankiewicz, Gertrude Russell, and Donald Ogden Stewart. Could be interesting. With Marie Dressler cast as the family servant, the screen version of Sidney Howard's The Late Christopher Bean, retitled just Christopher Bean, and later Her Sweetheart for the screen, leaned more toward slapstick than when Pauline Lord played it on stage. Still, it passed as a vehicle for Miss Dressler, her last, and there were good performances too by Lionel Barrymore and Beulah Bondi in the role that she had created on Broadway. Sam Wood directed. Never heard of that movie either. A snippet of Gable, a touch or two of Helen Hayes, look-ins by Myrna Loy, Robert Montgomery, and William Gargan. It all may have mattered on the marquee, but the stars, except for John Barrymore, brought little to Night Flight. The film, adapted by Oliver H.P. Garrett from the novel by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, was engrossing in its pictorial catalogue of dangers in the air. Clarence Brown directed. Give special thanks to W.S. Van Dyke for recognizing the potential of Myrna Loy as a girl who had a way with a witty line, and was a svelte and individual leading lady to boot. The Thin Man was the epitome of the discovery, of course, but before that came 2 particularly entertaining comedy melodramas, Penthouse and The Prize Fighter and the Lady.
We've seen Penthouse, haven't we?
Yeah, we covered it in the podcast. Incidentally, in the latter, Max Baer turned out to be a better movie actor than most thespian athletes. Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett scripted the first, John Lee Mahan Jr., John Meehan, and Francis Marion wrote Prizefighter.
I remember that we quite liked Penthouse.
Yeah, it was great. This one we also covered on the podcast. So many of John Barrymore's talking picture roles are no longer available to us. The Archduke Rudolf von Habsburg in Reunion in Vienna is a case in point. Undaunted by the shadow...
Sorry, I'm just remembering that movie.
It's available to us now, but not in 1980, apparently. Undaunted by the shadow of Alfred Lunt, who played it in the original Robert E. Sherwood play, Barrymore gave one of his most uninhibited performances.
Does he seem completely mad?
Diana Wynyard in the Lynn Fontaine role may have been a little placid, but the rest of the cast, particularly Frank Morgan, gave thoroughly polished performances under the direction of Sidney Franklin. Ernest Vajda and Claudine West adapted.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, dissing Wynyard doesn't fly in this household. Anne Harding played some of her typical roles, exemplified by the title of one of them, Gallant Lady, in 1933 movies. Best was When Ladies Meet, a movie version of Rachel Crowther's play, with Miss Harding, at her most charming, meeting her unsuspected rival. Myrna Loy did a lot for that part. Alice Brady prattled in the background. Robert Montgomery and Frank Morgan held up the male end. Harry Beaumont directed the John Meehan, Leon Gordon screenplay.
I feel like this guy is obsessed with Myrna Loy.
Yeah, well, with good reason. Alice Brady and Frank Morgan were good enough in Broadway to Hollywood that you could get through the cliche-filled storyline. Marion Davies was always at her best in light things like Going Hollywood, but better than that was Bing Crosby, singing a good Brown Freed score, Temptation among others. Hell Below didn't break any new ground in its study of men trapped in a submarine, but the cast, Robert Montgomery, Walter Houston, Robert Young, Madge Evans, and unexpectedly touching Jimmy Durante, made it worthwhile.
You like to see Jimmy Durante?
Always, he's great. Hold Your Man was regulation, Gable Harlow, rowdy romance. That's kind of damning with faint praise, but yes, all Gable Harlow movies are worth seeing.
How much longer does this go on?
There's just a lot of MGM movies. Until the 1950s, with Ethel Merman's Gypsy and Sylvia Sidney in a Chayefsky TV play, Alice Brady was the definitive stage mother, with Maureen O'Sullivan very lovely as the actress daughter. And last but not least, definitely not, since this is one of the movies I have in my top 4 on Letterboxd, Miriam Hopkins was always interesting, and she had 2 widely varying 1933 films. A rather grotesque version of William Faulkner's Sanctuary that wasn't made by MGM.
And we've commented on that before, that you couldn't really be otherwise than grotesque.
And a Phil Stong drama of rustic gossip, The Stranger's Return. Time now for the main event, and we'll dip into the MGM story by John Douglas Eames and his brief impressions here of Fast Workers. The long and painful decline of John Gilbert from topmost star to second feature hero ended with Fast Workers, which concluded his contract. Ironically, its routine script about skyscraper construction men came from Lawrence Stallings, writer of his 1925 triumph, The Big Parade. Carl Brown and Ralph Wheelwright collaborated. Willard Mack and Mae Clark, Robert Armstrong and Sterling Holloway all were featured. Tod Browning directed.
So once again, I'm left asking whether he had actually seen this movie. Whatever you think of it, it's anything but routine.
It was so good.
I thought it was one of the weirdest. It's like very definitely a sordid pre-code with characters that couldn't appear at any other time in studio era Hollywood, although, maybe they bear some relationship to the Hard Eight characters.
It's also got a little bit of a resemblance structurally to Tiger Shark, which was remade during the Code era as Manpower.
Yeah, but the characters, there's a love triangle, but the characters are so different, and the setting is so different.
It's its own unique thing, there's no question.
John Gilbert was much better in this than in Queen Christina. This is a better role, and critics despised him in this movie. I don't know if that's because, contemporary critics, I don't know if that's because this was just not the kind of role they wanted to see the great lover in. But he's great. We know he's an excellent actor.
Yeah, I think he was incredible in this movie. Mae Clark possibly even better.
Yeah, playing the kind of role nobody else could play.
Robert Armstrong, excellent as well. Carl Denham from King Kong.
I thought this movie was so unusual in its treatment of the characters and of the love triangle, even for a pre-code.
Tod Browning, his career gets slagged on and assassinated just as much as Gilbert's does. I mean, he's the directorial equivalent of Gilbert.
Tod Browning and John Gilbert, according to the lore, according to everything that I read about this movie, were just put on it to punish them.
Whatever the intention was behind getting this group of people together, I think they made something magnificent. It seems like just the whole world at that point, and still people are stuck on this default setting that Gilbert's career is over, Browning's career is over, nothing good could possibly have come of this. Did you find anyone waxing enthusiastic about Fast Workers?
No, nobody at all.
It deserves champions.
We've talked about this before. As everyone knows, very few big silent stars made the transition to sound intact, Greta Garbo being one of them, really established stars. The point that Hollywood film history seemed to reach was debunking the myth that Clara Bow, that her sound films weren't successful or that she wasn't good in them. Debunking the myth that John Gilbert's career crashed and burned because of his voice. But nothing has really gone beyond debunking. That's kind of frozen there. It's like, no, really, actually there was nothing wrong with his voice, but then there's not a lot of reconsideration, generally speaking, of the movies themselves.
No, they act as if, well, he could have been in great movies, but all the ones that he was in the 30s suck. And that's not his fault. It's because MGM was punishing him all the time.
Yeah.
But he was in 2 movies that we watched this week that did not suck.
What we know is that there's maybe never been a more radical shift of taste in media than the silent to the sound era, where massive, massive stars, all of a sudden, overnight, maybe slightly comparable is the transition from the early to the late 60s. Massive, massive stars just overnight were suddenly considered ridiculous. Certainly John Gilbert was. How fucked up would that make you? That in just a few years, you're not even particularly serious about acting, say, but in just a few years, you are a star of the likes of which the world has never known, a film star of the silent era, and suddenly everybody thinks you're the most sexually magnetic human being who's ever lived. And then overnight, they hate you. Like, what the fuck would that do? Well, it didn't do John Gilbert any favors.
He managed to kill himself with alcohol by, age 36, 37?
And it's not for any lack of, fabulous women being interested in helping him. Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich among them.
Ina Claire.
But not even that could save him. But we're here with our tiny voice and our couple of hundred listeners to say that in fact, Fast Workers is some kind of weirdo gem and John Gilbert is great in it.
He really is. So we're involved in this masculine world at the start, not too dissimilar from Tiger Shark and the remake Manpower, right? They're construction workers who specialize in skyscrapers.
Yeah, and based on an unpublished play by absolute weirdo John McDermott. People who are listening to this podcast at the time we release it, if you want to find out something about John McDermott, you're going to have to go to Grokipedia and actually click on the links, some of which are going to lead you to the right person, from a variety of sources on the internet, and find out about this absolute weirdo failed playwright who wrote this screenplay, or the play it's based on, and also created one of the weirdest mansions, helped to construct one of the weirdest mansions ever in Hollywood before becoming a Hollywood casualty himself.
So you got these guys, 2 best friends, John Gilbert and Robert Armstrong. They've got a little crew around them as well. Prominent in this film is Sterling Holloway, the voice of Winnie the Pooh. He's got a little bit more dimension to his character in this movie than in most films. He's got more scenes.
To give you an idea of how weird this movie is, what is going on with this subplot of him being fascinated by these pigeons that are going to hatch that ultimately end up being cooked by one of the men?
It's a horror movie. Yeah, he loves these little pigeons. He keeps talking about how the eggs have life in them. And then everyone keeps telling him, don't get attached to the pigeons. They're just going to fly fly away on you. And what they really mean is that they're going to roast them.
Why? Why do these construction workers, at the top of this building, why do they need to eat the pigeons?
Because they're pricks, man.
And of course, Tod Browning is filming all of this in the utmost terrifying way, for good reason. That's like Chekhov's Vertigo.
Someone's going to fall. It's amazing that more people don't drop from the skies.
Well, this is what I was thinking and saying out loud watching this is, could this possibly be a realistic representation, an accurate representation of how few safety precautions were in place for high-rise construction work in this period, and how many men, if so, plummeted to their deaths?
Well, I think there probably are books on that.
So the lives of these working class men, all of whom are presented as white, other than the token black man who isn't really doing the same kind of work that they are obviously cheap, and that probably influences the way that they are living when they're not working.
Yeah, well, they're getting paid fairly well. And they're blowing it all at bars. The people that we get to know, they're definitely living the bachelor life and kind of defiant about it, right? Like the whole idea, friendship between Gilbert and Armstrong, is that Armstrong keeps losing the plot and thinking he wants to get married, and Gilbert seduces the women to show him that no woman is worth getting married to.
Right, but Bucker, Robert Armstrong's character,
Bucker and Gunner,
is the all-time sucker and keeps falling for each new woman and believing in her innocence every time. Mae Clark's Mary is a character I feel like I have never seen, even in a pre-code before, because she is just completely unapologetically a sex worker and a liar.
with a heart of gold.
Does she have a heart of gold? I
Well-
don't think the movie cares if she has a heart of gold. Like, she doesn't even have the traditional tender heart of gold.
Well, she loves John Gilbert.
Yeah, she loves John Gilbert. That doesn't give her a heart of gold, though. She just loves somebody.
Yeah, she's got a tender spot for him.
She's just a person who is in love with somebody. She's not good, she's not evil. Like, nobody is trying to portray this character as ultimately good. So this is what I found interesting. Maybe we can attribute this to John McDermott. Maybe we can attribute it to Tod Browning. I don't know. But most movies that had a character like this who was constantly lying to and manipulating men to try to get money out of them and using sex to do so would present this as some kind of moral problem. But this movie just doesn't seem to have that dimension at all, one way or the other.
We're also shown that the men that she's dealing with, they're all forthrightly stating that they don't want to get involved with women. So the only way to get these guys to commit even temporarily, long enough to get a gift out of them or something, is to lie to them and bamboozle them.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, Mae Clark doesn't have any other way of making money. So we've got the situation where the working class men are risking their lives in order to be able to make decent money, and the women are borderline sex workers.
She also says, I could go to another town and get a job in a show, but I'm stuck lurking around here looking for scraps from John Gilbert.
Sure, showgirl slash borderline sex worker.
Like in Waterloo Bridge.
Yeah, but with a very different attitude.
She's not nearly as fragile.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we are not necessarily supposed to feel much sympathy, although another movie might give him sympathy anyway. Not necessarily supposed to feel much sympathy for Bucker because he requires a woman to be innocent in order for him to want to take up with her in the first place. And ultimately, the trajectory of John Gilbert's character is that he doesn't, right? He knows who Mae Clark is and he falls in love with her anyway.
He's fighting it every step of the way.
Sure, but he's fighting everything. I was going to say, he's not interested in good girls either. Of course, he doesn't think there are any.
No.
But that seems to be a step beyond the evolutionary stage that Bucker's at.
Yeah, of course.
Where he thinks every woman is a good girl, but that's the way that he is categorizing women.
Very extreme Madonna whore complex.
Do you think he's going to be okay in the end, though? Like the nurse, maybe the nurse really is a decent girl?
Well, no, the nurse is already out because of John Gilbert's gambit with the coin again.
You don't think he can come back from that?
No, definitely not. The movie ends with John Gilbert saying, I nearly got myself killed to teach you a lesson, basically, and you're still stupid. Just ends on one of the most unexpected notes for something that gets pretty intense.
I think, though, well, this was my experience of watching it anyway. I knew that somehow John Gilbert was going to have to come around to falling in love with Mae Clark, but I wasn't expecting it to happen the way that it does happen, so unsentimentally, without either of them having to be proved heroic or victimized in any way. I mean, we see the way they're victimized. They're socially victimized, but they're not sentimentalized.
It's a really interesting sequence when he's coming to this realization and he punches a window out.
Yeah, he starts getting angrier and angrier.
I guess it starts at the bar when he's making them play music that nobody else wants to hear. He's just sort of getting belligerent with the entire city.
Well, this is after May Clark decides to marry Bucker.
He doesn't know that, right? He thinks that she's engaged, and what he typically does is seduce women right when they're on the verge of getting married to Robert Armstrong. This time, Armstrong fooled him by getting married right away without telling him.
This time also, he actually wants to bust it up, not just because he's trying to help out his friend and prove something about women, but also because he is actually jealous.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to bear it if they're actually together. It's going to be so stupid. He's going to go insane. She's got to know that this is going to lead to some very dire consequences.
Right, and I'm obviously at the point at which she is like skipping out on her honeymoon in order to go to Atlantic City with Gunner after she's just gotten married.
She announces that her mother is ill or is dying.
I mean, what she's doing is so terrible. You can't really feel sympathy for Bucker because he's such an idiot and he has a lot of wrong ideas, like I said in the first place, but what she's doing is just so terrible. And also you expect that something really dire is going to come of it, like the men are going to fight each other or one of them's going to kill her or...
She seems to be expecting to be killed. She even mentions, when I saw that look on his face, I thought the plan was to kill me.
When she's talking about Bucker, but earlier when John Gilbert starts, punching his hand through windows, she's also worried about him attacking her.
I don't know about that.
Well, she says so to her friend Millie, who I liked a lot in this movie.
Oh yeah, she was excellent. Everyone was great. This movie is not a B movie as far as I'm concerned.
Muriel Kirkland at one point credibly threatens to bring an end to Gunner if he doesn't calm down and get out. It was a snappy exchange between the two of them where they're each threatening to do each other in. We've seen Gilbert in this movie beat up a bigger man, but Millie just coolly tells him, "You're going to be done for if you don't get out of here." And it's not really played as a joke.
No, definitely not.
The way this actress delivers it, you believe she can back this up. She's maybe had to back this up in the past.
No, it's a very serious film. Browning, if this was some kind of punishment assignment, and he didn't even get official credit for it, he seems to be taking this just as seriously as Freaks, a movie that MGM took its logo off.
I guess that's why he appears uncredited as the director of this.
They were sick of his antics, for sure.
The story is that he was assigned to this movie as punishment for Freaks. But yeah, Tod Browning is probably a director who can't help but take seriously anything he's making, particularly if he's got a good script and good actors.
Contemporary slant you often get on Browning is that, he was drunk and he had nothing to do with the good movies that people are willing to acknowledge, right? Like Dracula. Everyone seems to want to take that away from him.
Well, who do they want to give this movie to then?
Well, they don't think this is a good movie.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying, who are we going to attribute it to then, if not Tod Browning?
I'm attributing it to him. This movie is really treading some difficult liminal spaces brilliantly. These guys have terrible ideas in their heads. They're acting very badly.
Including Mary.
Yeah, everyone is. But I find them all quite likable. The movie allows you to see the world through their eyes enough that you can kind of get in sync with the pain that they're going through. Even though, things would be cleared up possibly, or much better if they would start thinking about social life in a different way. Given that they don't, I really feel like it manages to cajole you into encountering these events on the terms in which the participants encounter them. It's incredibly powerful in the way that it does that. The stakes of this homosocial friendship between these guys, they couldn't be higher.
It ends with one trying to kill the other.
And then the other one forgiving him, and their friendship presumably will be stronger than ever after this misstep. It's important that Armstrong makes the decision to kill him. I mean, we see him make the decision to kill him at the breakfast table. He goes off to...
Yeah, that look on his face.
It's a horror scene. He goes up to the skyscraper and subtly changes the placement of this plank so that he knows his friend is going to fall. Half a minute later, when it happens, he genuinely, he sees what he's done and he doesn't want it to happen.
And I mean, here is a good example, a great example of the detail of what I'm talking about. The fact that even at this point, May Clark just lies and lies and lies and ends up, not deliberately, but ends up egging him on to this murder by making up more stories, because, she doesn't want to get beat up, making up more stories about how Gunnar tried to seduce her and how she was completely innocent in all of this. So she is contributing to this tragedy, and that should also make us hate her. But all of these characters, for all of their terrible flaws, are presented as just people who are caught up in their passions.
Every action that everyone takes in this movie makes sense for those characters. None of it feels like stock melodrama, like it's just there to further the plot along and towards some other crazy development.
And then once this attempted murder takes place, then May Clark is just like, well, I don't care what happens to me now. She tells Bucker who she really is and what she's been doing in such a way that it's even really hard to say. This is Robert Armstrong's kind of doing a comedy performance most of the time, but during this whole sequence, as they're heading toward the climax and the murder attempt, he's playing it in a really interesting way, like he's forcing himself to continue to believe her, even though it's not possible that he can continue to believe this, right? But if he doesn't continue to believe her, he's going to kill her instead of his friend. It's kind of like a choice of one or the other for him.
Yeah, so I guess it's noble that he elects to go the friend-killing route.
But after this, May Clark just tells him, and this is the kind of interesting, honest bargain that she strikes with him that tells us something about the nature of these characters. If he dies, I'm going to the police, but if he lives, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Right.
But then, in the final sequence, in the hospital room, this is where we get a happy ending that's even more unexpected in a screenplay than anything that's gone before.
Well, the men close ranks again and expel her.
Right. Well, no, they don't, though. Gunnar admits he's in love with her.
Yeah, but I don't think that he's going to get her.
I don't know.
It is ambiguous, but I was feeling like he's going to have to give her up.
Yeah, I guess so. She plays it as
if it's over.
Well, no, I was going to say she plays it as if she's triumphant.
Well, she is triumphant in a way because
she doesn't play it sadly. But yeah, I mean, she did say the way this is going to go is that one day you're going to fall for a woman you can't have, and it's going to, whatever the phrase is that they use, cut through you like a knife. So yeah, I guess they do close ranks around her. He realizes their passions are much too volatile, but I don't know, we could read anything we want to into the ending. The fact that Bucker immediately gets interested in this nurse could signify that he's not ultimately that serious about May Clark.
Maybe, but the predominant tone of the finale just has that air of tragedy that, yeah, he comes to this realization, been coming to it for a while. His love for her is the love that she predicted he would feel for someone that he can't have.
Yeah, it's true. It's there in the screenplay, but I'm just saying that she doesn't play it as tragic as I would have thought if that were the case. So I really feel like you can imagine whatever you want for their future here.
You can, but what it doesn't give you is their romantic clinch and Robert Armstrong just goofily saying, "Oh, I give up, it's okay, don't worry." There's absolutely none of that.
That's true.
But it doesn't end on that note of tragedy because, as we were talking about before, it's got this nurse and the return of his foolish notions about every woman that he meets, and John Gilbert with his closing lines about everything he went through during the course of this film, broke all these bones, and Bucker is none the wiser after all of that.
Broke his bones, broke his heart.
And yeah, just those little touches. Sterling Holloway holding up those baby pigeons. It's a very tender shot, but of course it's all a setup for you to feel just as horrified as Holloway when they're getting roasted later.
Yeah, and again, why?
Because it's a horror movie. I mean, that is Tod Browning's métier.
No, but what? This is just to roast him? This is just a hazing?
I think so. That's how it comes across. It is important that Gunnar and Bucker don't participate in that kind of stuff. The guys that are doing that are real, background homosocial thugs.
Oh yeah, because I guess he is being punished for caring about anything.
That's right.
So that is the kind of social world that we're talking about.
Kind of what things were like when I was a teenage guy. When I would talk about becoming a vegetarian, this was not something that touched my friends' souls. It made them immediately want to talk about killing animals constantly.
The world of the women is really quite fleshed out in this movie as well.
Yeah, it is, of course. And that's where it really separates itself from... I mean, Tiger Shark's a good movie. It's an interesting Hawks film. And Raoul Walsh gets even more out of Manpower. But I like this more than either of those movies.
Oh, yeah. Well, Howard Hawks doesn't ever have a world of women.
No, definitely not.
At best, you might have a couple who are presented as rivals or foils, or several who are presented as sexually available. Or...
Yeah, and the ones that he likes best are the ones that are trying desperately to just become honorary men. This was an incredibly wide-ranging treatise on gender and class in 1933 America. Tod Browning did it all in 66 minutes.
I really am starting to feel, doing this podcast, and particularly doing this Studios Year by Year series, that there's more to the pre-code than just cheap titillation.
This is not a brand new realization.
Yeah, of course not, but there are certain pre-codes that at this point have been talked about a lot, ever since we were first really getting into movies, and some of these became more widely available in the 90s. Certain pre-codes have gotten a lot of attention, but then there are a lot more that nobody talks about at all that are just as interesting. And they do have this element of dealing with types of characters who are not sentimentalized or not heroized. And there is a sort of tawdry or sensationalistic aspect to the stories.
But they're not demonized either, because they don't have to be in a pre-code.
Yeah. And it's not the first time we've gotten these really dense milieus of certain social worlds that just aren't going to be treated at all in later movies, more glamorous Hollywood movies of the Code era, and dealing with gender in a way, for the same reason that we're not going to see again. I'm thinking of that Salesman movie that we watched recently.
Traveling Husbands.
Yeah, not anything similar in terms of its social world to this movie, but like this movie, it's a microcosm of the world that it's presenting.
Yeah, I agree. And this is another impressively low-down proletarian film from Glamour Factory MGM.
Here's the thing, Dave. Wikipedia and IMDb both say that the producer of this movie was Tod Browning, although if you look around on the web and see people writing about it, they're going to tell you that Tod Browning hated this movie and had his name taken off of it. And so little in total is written about it that I don't know how to clarify which is true. Is this something Tod Browning wanted to produce because he had his heart set on it? Was it something he was assigned to and hated, so he had his name removed from it? Did he somehow produce it, but then the control got taken away from him and that's why his name was removed? I don't know. It's all a big mystery, but it seems like it would be worth solving by some film historian, given the importance of Tod Browning as a director.
I agree. To me, this feels like an important film by an auteur, and it would behoove all of us to obtain more detail about what everyone was thinking as this film was being put together. It wasn't the end of his MGM career. The last few movies he made were all at MGM, I think, right? But they were all weird little items, like The Devil Doll and Mark of the Vampire, and his last movie, which we covered in a 1939 episode, Miracles for Sale. The story of Browning is always he was in total decline. Freaks is this late triumph. Maybe he's responsible for that. People can't really find a way to take the credit for Freaks away from him. But after that, it's a fade out into drunkenness and eventual death. To me, this still seems to be a director working at very high level and working with some excellent performers who, certainly in Gilbert's case, he is very near death, but this is a terrific and totally unexpected turn from him.
He certainly doesn't seem like a man near death in this movie.
Pretty vigorous. He looks a little seedy, but he should. I mean, that's the milieu. Just because it's not a great lover part doesn't mean that it's not an amazing opportunity to show us what he can do. And he did, but nobody watched. And still, everyone is kind of parroting
the lore.
Stubborn insistence at the time that this guy's finished. Let's hear what John Douglas Eames had to say about our second film. Rouben Mamoulian had Garbo's movements timed to a metronome like a ballet for the lyrical "I am memorizing this room" scene in Queen Christina. After making As You Desire Me, Garbo had taken a year off, mostly in Sweden, leaving the world, and not least MGM, in suspense about her possible retirement. A new and lucrative contract with script, director, photographer, and cast approval rights brought her back. The romanticized story of Sweden's 17th century queen became the star vehicle in excelsis. It was still getting profitable bookings 40 years later. Script was by Garbo's friend Salka Virtel, with S.N. Behrman and H.M. Harwood. Direction was by Mamoulian. Photography by Garbo's favorite, William Daniels. Her leading man was John Gilbert, replacing newcomer Laurence Olivier because she wanted to restore her old co-star's prestige. And production was by Walter Wanger. All was as Garbo desired it, and she responded with her finest performance to date. Lewis Stone, Ian Keith, C. Aubrey Smith, Akeem Tamiroff, and Reginald Owen supported reverently.
So what happened here, as we've already alluded to, and which became part of the lore, is Mayer had just gotten rid of John Gilbert, and then Garbo demanded him back.
Right, he was a freelancer at this point, no longer under contract.
Gilbert himself says, that Mayer was completely openly hostile to him while he was making this movie, which didn't improve his confidence and, ultimately his ability to survive. Under the circumstances, he felt like nobody wanted him in this movie other than Garbo.
Well, if you're gonna only have one person on your side, Greta Garbo's a good ally.
Well, he got through it. Obviously, because, you could see this was a good movie. It was a good role. The chance to come back as a star. Unfortunately, it didn't work for him. The movie was a success, like with a lot of Garbo movies from the Sound era, more in Europe than in America, but it didn't help his case at all. I do feel like his makeup and styling in this movie did not do him any favors. That hair.
It's probably not too far off from the way a Spanish emissary would have looked in the 1650s.
Yeah, the authenticity isn't helping him, though. And the role is just kind of weak, comparatively.
He's a supporting player.
He's absolutely a supporting player who's mainly just kind of an abstract object for Greta Garbo to worship and, kind of a catalyst for her character.
No, that's fine.
He himself isn't doing much more than worshiping her.
I think their first scenes at the inn are really fun, when he thinks she's a man to start out with.
He doesn't even win his duel against the villain.
Tragic, it's like a Max Ophuls film.
But he's not even heroic enough to win his duel. And he's like, the first time she meets him, he's getting stuck in the snow. He can't do anything right in this movie, other than, make her happy.
I think it just adds to the poignancy of the Gilbert legend that this is, his second to last film, and he expires on camera right near the end and gives Garbo a chance to stand for maybe the most famous close-up ever filmed as she reflects upon the meaning of it all.
Famously, the direction Mamoulian gave her at the end was to not think about anything.
Right, but that lets you, as the audience, project anything you want.
So what's your relationship with this movie? I first saw it as a teenager.
Yeah, me too, and I've seen it quite a few times since. It's one of the great movies of the 1930s, I think. One of Rouben Mamoulian's masterpieces, although he's got quite a few.
Given how invested the movie is in subverting heteronormativity, I've always found it a little bit boring.
Really?
A little bit stiff, like the collars that Greta Garbo's wearing throughout the movie. A little bit buttoned up, like every outfit that she's wearing in this kind of drab cultural backwater that Sweden is being portrayed as, playing Renaissance catch-up. And it's a very, very serious movie into which this love story's been inserted that apparently Garbo thought was kind of silly, or at least the way it was used in the movie. She wasn't very pleased with something that I thought about watching the movie on this viewing. The fact that Christina is shown as abdicating for a man. Obviously, this movie has very serious intentions and its portrayal of possibilities for women that are a little bit betrayed by that Hollywood love story development. But it does kind of work as a metaphor that a mass audience could understand, say, for the kind of freedom that this character is looking for that she's never going to find being the ruler of Sweden at this time.
Yeah, Sweden in the 17th century was kind of equivalent to what Prussia would become later, right? It was kind of a small state. It was punching way above its weight through insane military organization. And they did rise up to great power status during this little interval, but it was all going to crash down within 50 or 60 years on them. Nothing was going to change that. Eventually it morphed into the Sweden that we know today that is nothing like this, not an imperial northern power.
And regardless, she has no interest in being an imperial power. She wants cultural enlightenment and peace.
Everything that you want in this film is there, but you have to, in some cases, squint to see it. It's not so much that she is abdicating for a man, although that is the proximate cause. What she's really objecting to is that everyone wants Reginald Owen, her blonde cousin, to marry her so that he can really take over and lead Sweden as a kind of war machine, just endlessly devastating Europe far and near, adhering to the coldest Protestant maxims, Lutheran ideas, or lack of ideas about art and culture as presented here. Certainly no expert on 17th century European history, but I got some sense of the 30 Years' War and what happened immediately after it. I know that Christina was involved in putting an end to the 30 Years' War, which was an absolute massacre, right? One of the deadliest wars ever fought in terms of the millions of people that were killed, civilians mostly, in Germany. And Sweden was a big part of that because they were fighting abroad, right? They were just fighting the Catholic powers for 30 years. She wanted to stop it, and she did. A few years later, she leaves. She becomes a Catholic, I know that.
Yeah.
And that's the big reason she leaves in historical terms.
It does appear, I didn't do a lot of reading about the historical Christina, but she did have a very intimate friend and bedmate named Ebba, which has given rise to speculation that she was a lesbian or bisexual.
Well, which this movie certainly nods to.
Right, and of course it's also nodding to the speculation about Greta Garbo. And everything you read about the movie now is kind of complaining about how it soft sells these hints at Christina's bisexuality. Watching this movie for the first time in probably at least 20 years, I was shocked by how, on the contrary, it just absolutely, frankly presents her as bisexual.
Yeah, she's in a relationship with Ebba, for sure. And that's why she's pissed off. And the heteronormativity pushing in on her. This scene where she realizes that Ebba, whatever her feelings are for her queen, she's also got this guy, and seems to be very important to her. She's been compelling loyalty rather than
misusing her power.
Yeah, exactly.
But she is also having an affair with a man.
Ian Keith, an awful man.
Yeah, which proves to be her downfall, whereas she and Ebba make up and continue to be friends, and Ebba continues to support her for the rest of this movie. Anyone with a brain paying attention who was aware of the existence of homosexuality would understand what's going on in this movie. The movie's also interested in, well, clearly very interested, maybe even more interested in subverting gender norms, and just in presenting this complex, intellectual, powerful leader of a woman in a way that you don't really see in costume dramas of the time. It's a very different, very unique, and as I said, very serious movie. But I just don't find that it has that spark of sexy fun of something like The Scarlet Empress.
It's a very different enterprise from The Scarlet Empress, but approaching it on its own terms, I think it's just as great a film. I think Garbo's giving an amazing performance in this movie. Anyone that thought Garbo couldn't laugh clearly hadn't seen this movie, because she's laughing quite a lot, and she's
laughing at a man just like she does in Ninotchka. And
exactly.
in a lot of ways, this animus-dominated, at times almost automaton-like queen, although we also see a very rich emotional life for her, in a lot of ways this character seems like a rehearsal for Ninotchka.
Yeah, exactly. I really enjoy her relationship with these old guys that are gathered around her.
The abdication scene is very moving.
It is. Friendship with C. Aubrey Smith, wonderful. I mean, he's her kind of valet, I guess, or whatever he is, but their scenes together are fantastic. Her chief political vizier, Louis Stone, is the one that, is ultimately flabbergasted by this abdication. Because C. Aubrey Smith gets to go with her. And I think Reginald Owen's performance is amazing as this himbo blonde cousin. I mean, we're not used to seeing him play that kind of role, but he pulls it off brilliantly here. What a devastating fate it would have been if she was forced to marry this guy. You can see why she's even preferred Ian Keith over him.
When Lewis Stone is talking to her about her duty to have an heir, and she's like, not with Charles.
Another inbred monarch. Great. But yeah, so that abdication basically saying, you all want Charles to be in charge anyway.
Charles in charge.
That's right. So here he is. I'm leaving. I don't want to marry him and then get stuck having to obey him as well. I'm going to do something else.
But everyone is still so invested in her.
The royal line goes through her. So, of course, yeah, they want her to stay, but they want her to be hitched to this military guy. And that's one thing that she isn't. She's absolutely comfortable in the political world, even though she's at loggerheads, even with people that she cares about. But she has no interest in, let's say, leading the army. She wants to rein in Sweden's maniacal army. Ultimately, people are not going to go for that, even though they are deferential toward her when they have to confront her face to face. It doesn't change anyone's opinions about what they believe Sweden's destiny is. And she wants no part of it.
She says at a certain point in this movie, something like, there's a voice within you that tells you what you must do. We have to read between the lines and, as I said, see the romance as a Hollywood metaphor for what is ultimately an act of individualism.
Her relationship with John Gilbert represents a sustained engagement with the flowering of European culture and thought, talking about Calderon, everything that is going on in the main current of Renaissance and post-Renaissance Europe. And this kind of thinking has been interrupted, at least for now, in Lutheran Sweden. And she's at loggerheads with the people that run the university in Uppsala. She wants a diverse range of professors, and they're like, no, we must have only Orthodox Lutheran theologians.
Yeah, and of course we see this xenophobia in action after she publicly takes John Gilbert as her lover.
The hoi polloi is easily roused to anger by the manipulations of Ian Keith.
It's such an odd movie in how completely buttoned up the queen is, and there's this landscape of perpetual snow. She's obviously never presented as a sex object, although she puts a dress on after having sex with John Gilbert because she's feeling a little bit feminine that day. And yet it is a rapturously sensual movie.
The most famous scene, of course, memorizing the room. Even John Douglas Eames talks about it.
But memorizing it through sensual touch.
Yeah, those grapes and running her eyes over every square inch of the compartment at the inn. The morning after scene where they're behind curtains and Akim Tamarov comes in to ask if Gilbert is ever leaving the bed. And he's like, no, bring us cocoa.
Right.
Hilarious. And they think he's in there with a man.
The movie shows enough commitment to its subversion of heteronormativity, as I was saying, that Gilbert at that point, well, what does it mean that Gilbert doesn't care whether his servants think that he's with a man? Specifically, it means that he feels that he has had an experience that is somewhat perverse, abnormal in terms of gender and sexuality, and he's cool with that. He enjoyed himself.
Yeah, well, this is before he realizes that he's cut in on his own sovereign, who's attempting to marry Queen Christina.
Well, yeah, he gets a little snippy about that briefly.
I thought he was brilliant in those scenes. He really conveys the agony he's going through. He unexpectedly met this amazing woman who he thought was a man at first.
An attractive boy.
Right. And then she reveals herself to be the queen, and his whole reason for being there is to bring an offer of marriage. I mean, this is a very conflicted man. And Gilbert really conveys all of that. I don't think it's a negative that he's being asked to play a weak and kind of thwarted character here. I think it gives him more wonderful opportunities to display, something that he had gained by hard-fought experience. This is a very broken man on screen, and he's not afraid to show that. Something really amazing about that.
Yeah, he's just not going to give her any competition in the manliness department.
And he's fine with that. I think it's a fascinating gender commentary that the movie asks us to believe that Greta Garbo, just because she doesn't have a dress dress on, people are going to assume she's a teenage boy.
Well, there weren't probably a lot of women going around dressing up as men.
I know, but it just doesn't go to extremes. She looks the same. The only thing that's different is that you can see she's got breasts when she takes off her coat.
They're not very prominently featured either.
No, but it's enough. I mean, those scenes are pretty great. He seems a little bit concerned about how into this boy he is. And yeah, when he sees the breasts, he kind of has a bit of a sigh of relief.
It's a really weird line, actually. He says, I sensed a presence.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean? A presence of breasts?
I'm not sure I see the stiffness that you're talking about in this movie. I find it all very fluid, bites through incredible incidents, and it etches a strong portrait of a woman and a politician who wants to absolutely transform the world that she lives in and knows that she can't, even though she's in the ultimate position in order to affect that change. You just can't go against an entire society, even if you're the ruler. It doesn't present her as, oh, it's because she's a woman that she can't make this change. She has these ideas because she's a woman and she's had a different life experience, but she cannot, the fact that she can't make the changes that she wants has nothing to do with the fact that she's not strong enough because she's not a man. It threads that needle brilliantly because you never feel like, oh, well, if she had just persevered, she could have done it. It's impossible what she wants to do.
Again, I think I was more impressed than ever before watching it, just how unusual what it's trying to do is. And I think you have to credit Garbo in large part for being the auteur here, because I think she is the one who wants to craft this kind of persona on screen, who wants to play this kind of character.
Mamoulian's certainly interested in helping her do that.
Yeah, and of course so is her friend, intellectual Selka Viertel. It's impressive, but I definitely did not wholly get over my feeling of being slightly bored by its impressive seriousness. That said, the ending did make me cry buckets. Why does she have to, having given up her throne and this responsibility that has meant so much to her, that clearly means so much to her, in order to gain this flourishing life as an individual, which is what the whole movie has been about, individual flourishing and what you might have to sacrifice to accomplish that, the movie leaves her with nothing at all. And why do you think that's the case? Is that just the realistic situation that a woman who is attempting this much, whether in Queen Christina's era or Greta Garbo's era, that this is how she's going to end up? She's just not going to be able to accomplish it.
She's not going to be able to transform European politics, no.
No, but she is personally left with nothing at the end of the movie.
I think that's to the movie's credit. As you were saying, there's a danger of it seeming like, oh, well, she just gave up her crown for John Gilbert.
But the movie sells that really, really, really hard, that this has been a once-in-a-lifetime transformative love.
Yeah, but she's not going to live happily ever after with him because it's never been about that. It's been about so much more.
She's going to have a tragic life having lost this love, don't you think?
It's an open question. The real Christina, I don't think did, right? I think that she...
Yeah, this is a different Christina.
But it's a linked Christina. The plot elements are different, but she did go on to, I mean, she converted to Catholicism. She engaged with Southern Europe in all kinds of ways. I think she lived in Rome and hung out with popes. She was doing all kinds of things that no other Swedish women of the time were doing, for sure. It has always been about expanding her horizons as a human being. And John Gilbert gives her an opening to do that. But he doesn't need to live in order for her to continue down that path. And I think the movie decides it's better if he doesn't, because then it doesn't seem like, oh, well, she's just hanging out with John Gilbert for the rest of her life. No, she's going to have to forge her own path. And that's what, to me, seems like she's thinking about on the prow of that ship. I can't be queen anymore, but I can be just about anything else. What am I going to choose?
I suppose. I mean, it's a little...
I mean, it's
the body's not even cold yet, so
no,
she might... not be quite thinking about that yet. But...
No, it's obviously tinged with melancholy.
Were you not sobbing?
Horrible. Yeah, because I liked the John Gilbert character. They could have had lots of fun together, I'm sure.
It's interesting because Garbo starts off in the silent era being paired with John Gilbert as, the two great screen lovers. So she's thought of initially as part of an on-screen couple, which they were also having an affair off-screen at the time, as people knew. But from that emerges, by the sound era, more and more this iconic, austere, isolated individual who becomes associated with the phrase, I want to be alone.
I want to be alone at the top of the credits.
So it's interesting thinking of Greta Garbo's trajectory this way, and maybe how this movie encapsulates that a little bit, and the tension between Garbo as the great lover, who really sells you on the idea in this movie, with Mamoulian's help, that love could be human flourishing for her, or all of her human flourishing. This enlightenment that she wants to realize of multiculturalism and appreciation of the arts of all of the cultures. That all of this could take place within the sphere of this loving equality with John Gilbert. And I mean, we haven't even kind of spoken of how radical this couple is in the absolute equality between them for a movie of this period. But the movie sells you on this idea that love could be the basis of her flourishing, but then presents us at the end with Garbo as the isolated individual.
Yeah, well, it's like Plato's Symposium, the end of Plato's Symposium, where Socrates talks about diotima, and love puts you on the ladder toward being an actual philosopher, and that's where she's headed.
Yeah, and I mean, the first rung of that ladder, the first lesson is really, really hard one.
And Ian Keith never punished. He just kills John Gilbert and goes back to being a rat at the court.
She should have stuck with Ebba.
Time for Fear and Moviegoing in Toronto. We went to see Hard 8. How did you feel about that film? It wasn't your first time seeing it.
Well, I don't want you to ask me that. I want to ask you that. This is one of your favorite movies?
One of the only times I can genuinely say that I recognized a great auteur immediately. Because I saw it. I didn't see it in the cinema. I don't even know if it played in the cinema in Montreal, but it probably did. But I rented it as soon as it became available. I walked into the video store and saw it. It looked interesting. Put it on, and I was like, this is not just an ordinary 1990s neo-noir or whatever I thought it was going to be. It was so much stranger and more compelling than that. And you can kind of see in microcosm so much of what PTA was going to do later.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened to me. I don't think I've ever just put on a movie by a director I've never heard anything about and been like, wow, this is a work of genius without any preparation.
No, I can honestly say that's how I felt. And I did feel vindicated when movies like Boogie Nights and Magnolia and especially Punch Drunk Love came along, in the next 5 years.
Watching this for the second time, because I watched it with you before, many years ago, I barely remembered anything of the plot. So I want to ask you, what the hell does this movie mean? And why do you like it so much?
It's an interesting question.
It's certainly an interesting movie. It certainly held my interest.
Well, the performances are incredible, I think.
Sure.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Philip Baker Hall, he would be used again by PTA, and he is the center of the film. You're trying to figure him out for most of it, for all of it, possibly.
Well, I'm really not trying to figure him out until the twist comes that you can either think is genius or is disappointing. Not disappointing in the character, but disappointing as a writing decision.
You think it's hackneyed?
No, not hackneyed. I just mean maybe less interesting than the mystery was. You haven't answered my question. So what does this movie mean to begin with?
If you're looking at it from his perspective, from his character's perspective, Sydney, it's a tried and true noir theme, right? Someone who's done terrible things, trying to live with that and make something else out of his horrible life.
Except then he does some more terrible things.
Yeah, well, I think that's the point of the film, that you can't erase the past, right? I mean, I don't think that's a staggering revelation on my part. I mean, he ends the movie with Phil Baker Hall pulling his sleeve down to cover up the blood. I mean, that encapsulates all of it right there. Maybe that's too blatant a metaphor, I don't know.
Does he have to kill Jimmy? He's got a problem with Jimmy from the beginning that seems to be aesthetic. He just doesn't like Jimmy's style.
No, he certainly doesn't.
And for a long time, I'm kept guessing as to just how terrible an influence Jimmy is supposed to be over John. But ultimately, it feels like Sydney ends up killing Jimmy because he doesn't like the word pussy, while John, on the other hand, calls Clementine a whore and smacks her around, and Sydney's just fine with that. His moral decisions as to who he's going to love and hate are very arbitrary. The movie just, to me, it almost seemed like moving chess pieces around in such a way that didn't so much generate any kind of meaning, but that was just trying to make things as morally opaque as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, but I don't think you want to undersell a bigger reason why he kills Jimmy, which is that he can never count on Jimmy not telling John the truth, and he wants his money back.
Yeah, but you're a monster to kill a man over $6,000, also a man that you have begged your own life from.
And that's probably part of it too. He didn't like feeling that way. He's a hitman. He's not a good man, right? I mean, that's the point of the movie.
But then why does he decide to adopt John?
Because even a terrible person can have deep, loving feelings that are really powerfully conveyed in this film.
But why? Why does he have these deep, loving feelings?
Most people do. Most people want to, and he really sets forth on a mission to feel them.
He's also jealous of Jimmy, obviously, because Jimmy is this alternate father figure who's more fun.
No, again, he's not an admirable character, Sydney. He's a morass of bad thoughts and ideas. But he's also exactly what John needed, at least, at the point where we meet him. And he seems to be exactly what Clementine needed, too. I think John C. Reilly and Gwyneth Paltrow is amazing in this movie. Don't you agree? You're not a Paltrow fan, but don't you think she's great?
Yeah, it's a good performance.
I don't know if I've ever seen a character quite like this, either.
It seems like a trope.
You really think that scene in the motel room feels like it could have been in any other movie?
Well, it's playing on a trope. Sex worker, probably abuse victim before that, who is so fucked up by the way that she's been living her life, the way she's been forced to live her life, that she is now completely self-loathing and self-destructive, and is therefore going to keep repeating this situation of her degradation.
No question. But I don't know. I feel like she has a point in that scene. Like, it's a point that, she has to concede eventually, because otherwise they're all going to go to jail, as everyone keeps pointing out. But she's right that this guy broke the contract.
Well, yeah, but no, what she's doing in the scene makes sense to me. She's willing to lose her life over it.
Yeah, she's pretty committed. That scene, I think, is just miraculous, everything that happens in it. And it's pretty rough. And as you say, I mean, you have this great love scene where John hits her in the face. And it's not how anyone would want to have a love scene play out, but it kind of ultimately gels into that somehow. Only the fact that these people have these incredibly strong feelings for each other somehow, and the fact that Sydney is there to ratify that and make them realize it. That's the only thing that gets them out of that pit of despair that they're in. They're not going to climb out of it without Sydney. He happens to be there. He happens to know exactly what to say.
Well, yeah, but Sydney is also partially responsible for getting John into that pit.
Sure.
Presumably losing his father is part of how he ends up where we see him at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, no doubt.
Honestly, the first 3/4 of the movie, and to an extent even after we get the revelation, is like Gangster Magnificent Obsession.
Yeah.
Except it turns out, well, Philip Baker Hall's a terrible person. Philip Baker Hall seems like the gangster Otto Kruger, but then he turns out to actually be like the gangster Rock Hudson. But he doesn't get the redemption that Rock Hudson has to earn so hard over and over and over again throughout that movie.
You can think about it in so many different ways, but I mean, he achieves magnificent obsession-like effects in saving them from that situation and sending them off to Niagara Falls. It's kind of a feel-good story in that sense, but
he's still just as terrible a person as ever.
It doesn't fix the fact that he's been killing people his whole life, and he continues to do so when the need arises. And he'll go back to playing Keno and occasionally betting the hard eight. That scene with Philip Seymour Hoffman, one of those early Hoffman set pieces. We'll talk about it as a main event at some point, so probably don't need to go on that much further, but I'm gathering that you don't feel as as strongly about it as I do.
I mean, maybe at one point, a lot of people aren't, okay, I just went on Letterboxd and looked at the audience reviews. A lot of people aren't that thrilled by this.
No, I know.
I don't find it better or worse than any other Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It's really interesting, and as you say, the performances are great, but I guess I don't yet feel, I haven't had a viewing where I feel the necessity of this story as opposed to just feeling kind of artfully manipulated by it. Let's just, like I said, let's just see how morally opaque I can make a situation with a bunch of weird characters.
Yeah, well, I think that is probably the inception point for the film. John C. Reilly, what an unlikely superstar actor. I find him amazing in this movie. You were asking me, is he a comedian or what is he?
Well, yeah, I was like, am I confusing him with Will Ferrell? But then you were like, Step Brothers. Oh, yeah. Just because it's another instance, obviously, of Paul Thomas Anderson working with a broad comedian in a dramatic role, although you said John C. Reilly has much more of a dramatic actor reputation than Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I would think so. A lot of his best films are PTA movies, right? I mean, he's the cop in Magnolia. He's so good in that as well. And that's a pretty heavy role. But sure, he can turn around and do Step Brothers, no problem. Next time on the podcast, we hope you'll join us for our concluding episode of the Gloria Graham Actourist Oeuvre Review. We'll be discussing the last three, arbitrarily chosen important films of her career: Ride Out for Revenge, Odds Against Tomorrow, and Ride Beyond Vengeance. And of course, we will be recapping the entire Gloria Graham saga, naming our favorites. And after that, we'll be bidding adieu to the Actourist Oeuvre Review concept and moving on to something different for 2026. We'll be doing actor spotlights instead, 6 movies at a time over 3 episodes. But we hope you'll join us.